College likes to limit their playoffs to 4 teams, but the NFL, thank God, allows us to argue on and on about who the 5th best team in the NFL is. Yep. So that's what we're going to do today with the Week 8 Power Rankings, brought to you, of course, by mybookie.ag. I'm George. Eric is alongside. Let's start with the bottom of the barrel, the New York Giants of the world. 32 through 21, Giants, Buffalo, Raiders, Cardinals. I don't think there's going to be any arguments there. So let's jump ahead to some teams that are actually decent.
I thought Giants 32-1 to win the Super Bowl, not 32 in our power rankings, right? Oh, no, just joking.
In all seriousness, though, the Giants probably should be moving on to Kyle Lauletta, despite his issues driving a car. Maybe he could drive that offense a little bit better. Some of those teams, though, that are in that 25 to 21 range that we kind of think can potentially make a jump. And one of the teams that I look to are the Indianapolis Colts. They've got a quarterback who is playing really well. That offensive line had the benefit of playing the Raiders, but by and large has been doing a better job. And then you've got Frank Reich, who has proven himself time and time again to be able to get this offense moving, even when players like T.Y. Hilton have been out. So I think the Colts, despite that really slow start, could start marching their way up and could move into those high teens.
Yeah, I mean, schedule's a huge deal here. The Colts have 3 consecutive home games now after starting 3-5. They very well could be in the hunt for the AFC South by the time that's over. So yeah, I like that a lot. I also look at teams like Miami, teams like Tampa Bay going through a quarterback change, as is Miami. Both teams are sort of not out of it at 4-4 and 3-4. So they could, if they turn it around, move up here. But I do think of those teams, Indianapolis is the one with the best prospect.
Glad we agree. We'll move on to 20 through 11. The Detroit Lions in at 20, all the way up to number 11, where the Baltimore Ravens sit. But let's talk about some of those teams in the middle there. The Dallas Cowboys, the Chicago Bears. It almost feels like they could really just dive one way or another.
Yeah, I think they're both kind of similar, right? So Chicago and Dallas both have pretty good defenses built, I think, the right way with good edge players, but really good secondaries. But offenses that are sort of sputtering at times, especially Dallas when they go on the road, they haven't been great offensively. And Chicago with Mitch Trubisky, who is seemingly putting up more negatively graded plays than positively graded ones. I think those two teams are always going to be that kind of middle of the pack because, defense isn't really what wins anymore. Offense does, and they're simply not consistent there.
All right, let's look at those 4 teams, 14 through 11 here, and I want to ask you this. We have the Ravens, then the Vikings, Redskins, and the Packers. But if you had to look forward and say, okay, we're going into the playoffs, which of these 4 teams actually ends up in the best position, who would it be?
Yeah, I think Minnesota is a team where we saw on Sunday night, if their offense gets going, they're very hard to stop with Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, and Kirk Cousins playing well. Their defense, even with the guys out, did play pretty well against New Orleans, holding Drew Brees to under 150 yards passing. So I think if the chips fall correctly for them, they could do pretty well, but it's always hard to go against the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers.
You meandered your way from way out there back to the correct answer, which is the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers actually playing tremendously this season despite the knee injury and some of those limitations that it has caused him. And so I think once he starts to get healthier, that defense also with those young cornerbacks should only progress. What we saw against the Rams, I think, should be encouraging there. If they could, get some players that actually listen to coaches, they probably win that
Kneel the
game.
ball down on kickoff return, please.
You're welcome. All right, before we get into the top 10, let me remind you, of course, that if you want to take any of the information you get here and profit off of it, you want to head to mybookie.ag. Even if it's for a totally different sport, you're sitting at home on a Tuesday, put on NBA TV, mybookie.ag has got you covered, whether it's an individual player, a season-long outlook for a team. They have it, trust me. They also have in-game live betting, so if things change at halftime, they've got you covered too. I think you used that the other day to your advantage. So head to mybookie.ag, use promo code PFF to get a $1 match on your first deposit. It's pretty simple. Go to mybookie.ag, play, win, and get paid. All right, 10 through 1, or should I say 4 through 1. We're going to have to talk about these teams that are not in the top 4. The top 4, of course, Kansas City, New England, New Orleans, and LA. But let's look at 10 through 5. And let me ask you this. What are the teams that you like best to get into that 5th spot?
Yeah, I think the Chargers are sitting there right now, and I think that they're built very much like the Rams, just kind of a weaker version. Phillip Rivers is playing tremendous right now. Their offense is really balanced with, they have kind of all kinds of receivers, led by Keenan Allen, doing all great things on a week-to-week basis. And then defensively, I think when they get Joey Bosa back, they have Casey Hayward on the outside as a cornerback. I think they're going to start progressing. Their defensive statistics were weak the first few weeks because they had to play the Rams and the Chiefs in the span of 3 weeks. So I think that the Chargers are sort of my team to go to number 5 with a bullet here.
It's hard for me to disagree with that. I like the Chargers as well. But let me give you one team that I think probably won't be a popular pick in terms of getting up to number 5, but I think should not be overlooked, and that's the Carolina Panthers. Yep. Cam Newton is playing really well. Norv Turner has turned over a new leaf and has really turned that offense into something that is a force to be reckoned with. Yep. He's utilizing Christian McCaffrey really well. He's utilizing Cam Newton and his ability to run the ball, and that is helping him pass the ball. And so I think the Carolina Panthers might not be the sexy pick to move up to number 5, but would be right behind the Chargers.
Yeah, a lot of question marks going into the season about Carolina's offensive line, and I think for good reason. Cam Newton's accuracy, and for good reason. And, they've seemed to have gotten over all of those things. Newton's having, I think, his best career season besides his MVP year. They, much like the Chargers, had wide receivers that do all kinds of different things. They have tight end and Greg Olsen, who's finally healthy, and he showed up really well against the Ravens, a game we picked as our lock of the week last week. So, yeah, I really like Carolina here. They've met and exceeded all expectations so far.
Okay, there is a surprise team in here. I know some of you out there are going, huh? How did the Seattle Seahawks move up into the top 10? Now, in my opinion, I don't think they're going to be in the top 10 for long, and here's why. They've got a gauntlet of a schedule coming up. But what do they have to do in these games? They've got like 4 really, really hard games.
Yeah.
If they win 1, can they stay in the top 10? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think, when you have a quarterback as good as Russell Wilson, right, it's been obscured over the last, 3-4 years because their offense has sputtered at times, but they're finally protecting him. They're finally taking some of the burden off of his shoulders. And their receiving core, Tyler Lockett's playing extremely well. They're getting open for him, and he's delivering. And I think their defense has been better than expected, shutting down, holding a good Detroit offense to 14 points last week. So, yeah, I think, if they win 1 or 2 of the next few games, they'll be, I think, soundly in the top 10 and exceeding most, prognosticators' expectations this year.
We liked them going into the season, and even I was sprinting to jump off the ship after a couple of weeks. So I can't say I told you so, but I don't know, sort of halfway there. Yeah. Let's talk very, very briefly about the top 4 now, because they are very good. All 4 of these teams seemingly have maybe a 25% or better chance to make it to the Super Bowl. Yep. So halfway through the season, which of these teams are you taking to end up in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think it's hard to go against New England, right? Kansas City, their defense has gotten better, but they're still, I think, far weaker than New England's defense. And then so New England just kind of has that experience. So I take them out of the AFC, and I think in the NFC, New Orleans is a team that I think that has been there. I think their defense is underrated relative to the Rams. And Drew Brees is one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. So I'm going New Orleans, New England.
I'm not going to disagree with you on the New England pick because I think they're going to end up with that AFC Championship game at home. But I will not sit here and besmirch the good name of Sean McVay. The Rams, I don't think are going to win this game in New Orleans this week, but they're going to rebound from that. And regardless of whether that game is played in New Orleans or LA in the playoffs, I think that Sean McVay will make it happen.
New Orleans has the toughest schedule moving forward after this week, so yes. I do agree that even if they win this game at home against the Rams, the likelihood that they end up with the number 1 seed is small because the Rams get to play in the NFC West, where the second best team in many people's eyes lost their quarterback this year, and as you said, Seattle, probably not the best roster in the world. So I do think that the Rams do come out of the NFC with the 1 seed, but I take the quarterback here with Brees.
We'll be back next week where we could have a new number 1 team with the top 2 teams in the NFL facing off this week. If you want to hear any more of our dulcet tones, you can head to profootballfocus.com and, of course, download the PFF forecast.